Today we have a very special guest who has a very unique business, and his name is EJ McCoy. He's an entrepreneur hailing from Allen, Texas, with a strong dedication to service. His journey started at a young age, mowing lawns in his neighborhood, and has now evolved into a successful career where he co-founded multiple home service businesses such as Chorbie, Scoop Soldiers, and Executive Lawn Care. As the CEO of Chorbie and Scoop Soldiers, he's on a mission to transform the home service industry using technology and franchising, all while valuing people and innovation. Welcome to the show, EJ.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so you have a very unique story, and I think it's something that, especially in the home service industry, it's something that people overlook. People like shiny businesses and technology, et cetera, but there's still a great opportunity in home services. So why don't we just start from the beginning and tell us, how did you get started with mowing lawns? Was it always something you're into? How did you get into that?
Yeah, no, I actually, for only a small piece of my life, if I ever actually liked mowing yards, then it was really more so when I first became a homeowner and or in my mid to late 20s. But early on, I didn't love doing manual labor or mowing yards, but frankly, it's what paid the best. Mm-hmm. And I was, from an early age, I think it was ingrained in me to really value time for money, and to really value that hourly rate, and that your time has a lot of value. My dad taught me that. So I had a lot of people around me that taught me the value of hard work and really encouraged mowing yards because it was something I could do, in a neighborhood. And I actually grew up right here in Allen, where I live now. But yeah, it was that work ethic, but then also that value of time and money early on, and that's mowing yards was the option at that time, and still for the longest time, and even to this day for that matter.
And so walk us through, how did you make the jump from, okay, at first you're starting a business and oftentimes you are trading, hours for dollars, right? Then you start to move into a stage where maybe you're getting some leverage, you're hiring people. Can you kind of walk us through, okay, you're an 8-year-old kid mowing lawns, earning a nice hourly rate. And then how did you evolve into an actual business?
Right. So first off, it wasn't any magic. It wasn't something that came natural to me. I'm a little bit of a slow adopter, if you will, in a lot of ways. Some things, areas I'm not proud of, but the point is you don't have to be perfect or great at any of this. But, when I'm young, when I'm 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, I wasn't somebody that you would call a hustler that was just constantly trying to hustle or had that natural knack of entrepreneurship. I was about as average as you get. I was just mowing yards like any other kid in the neighborhood. Well, by the time I'm 21, I've had a few jobs. I quickly realized I'm not that employable. I'm kind of a bad employee, quite frankly. And so I keep going back to mowing yards. And I had one person that was a business owner that had an LLC that was in my sphere of influence. And she said, it was my grandma. She said, you need to get an LLC. And I got an LLC. And so becoming a formal business was just really a part of growing up. But I think that rings true really at any age. When you're looking at starting a business, you don't have to have all of the answers. You learn those answers. You seek them out. You need to seek them out, but you learn those answers. And it really evolved. And even early, even by the time, so that's, I created my own LLC, which is kind of when I really got into business, so to speak, right? Creating an LLC as opposed to just being a solo operator I'm just cashing checks for $25 a pop, mowing yards. That happened for me. Could have happened. I could have learned that at 18 had I been a little bit more hungry, but I kept looking for the next big thing. And finally, after a number of years in my late teens, realizing I kind of settled at the time I'm 21, like, okay, I'm going to give this thing a real shot. I didn't take it seriously. It was mowing yards. Like, am I going to mow yards when I'm 30? I didn't think I was. I wasn't planning on it. Never was planning on it. Even when I was 21 and I created that LLC. Even when I was 24, 25, when I met my wife, I wasn't planning on mowing yards. Even when I'm 30, I'll be 40 next year. And I'm still mowing yards. Because my mindset shifted from about the time I was 30 to the time I was 35, 36, to realizing that what I had actually had in the skill sets we had, it was just about building and managing team members. And that was going to be the case in any business. And there was going to be negatives to every business. But I chose to recognizing that really empowered me to recognize the opportunities that I had in what I knew.
Yep. And EJ, for our audience, can, just so we can paint the picture of where you started until where you are now and then start to fill in the gaps, can you kind of share like what are your businesses now, maybe top line revenues, and then we can kind of start to close those gaps of how does somebody go from A to B?
Right. So right now, we this year we'll finish with just under 25 million in total revenues across really what's three specific brands. Scoop Soldiers, pet waste removal. That's our largest brand, doing about 13 to 14 million. We've got Executive Lawn Care, a brand that I acquired in 2014 through a mowing business that I had at the time. We acquired it. 2 years later, we spun it off, which really just meant we separated it back out. And it mows yards, essentially. And then we've got Chorbie, which is really that original LLC that I started when I was 21 years old. That's the mowing business that's the core thing that I still have today. It's actually a direct competitor of Executive Lawn Care. It's why I'm CEO and president, co-founder of Chorbie and Scoop Soldiers. Executive Lawn Care is a company that I bought, I acquired. We're still, it's still something I'm a part of, but I'm not the president or the CEO of that entity. And so I think I answered your question, but I'll just starting off the journey. We've never acquired outside of that Executive Lawn Care. We've never acquired our brands. The brands that I run today are brands that I co-founded with a business partner.
I see. Okay, great. And so EJ, let's go back to, you're an individual person, mowing, you set up your LLC, and then what happens from there? You hire a couple of your first employees, or how did you build that up? And then when did the acquisition happen? Then when did, Scoop Soldiers happen? How did that play out?
Right. So I'm 21 years old, 2006. I'm starting to grow up a little bit slowly, a little bit at a time. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to mow yards because I've tried to make, XYZ per hour doing this or that. But at the end of the day, I'm 21 years old. I haven't gone to school. I don't really have any super valuable skills at 21 years old. I'm about, again, as average as it gets when it comes at 21 years old. And so I think I can make the best living just mowing yards. And so I'm going to it takes an hour to mow a yard and you get $25 for it. Simple math. This is literally my thinking at 21 years old. I can get 40 yards and mow them, and I can make $25 an hour, 40 hours a week. And that's the genesis of the business. That was it. It was that simple. And then I quickly realized, oh my goodness, I got 40 yards really fast. I don't really like mowing yards. So, and again, you're talking in your head the entire time you're mowing yards. It's pretty, you can think. And so I'm constantly thinking about not only can I do this job the fastest in mowing this yard, but how can I scale this from 1 to 25 at this time? This is when I'm young. And then I quickly realized, well, how can I scale this from 25? So by the end of that year, I have 125 clients in 2006. And yes, I hired
serviced by yourself.
I ended up with 2 employees at that time. Mm-hmm. Seasonal guys that I picked up at a day labor center, much like you would in a home services mowing and landscaping business. And so, I ended up this season with about 2 employees helping me mow those yards, maybe even as many as 3, depending on the time of the year and the season. And then I realized, well, I got to keep these guys. Okay, well, we do leaf cleanups, that sort of thing in the off season. But then I also started having them do marketing door hangers really early because I didn't have anything else for them to do. So I'd saved up and I funded that using credit cards, frankly. Now I never paid interest on credit cards. That's not wise. I never used credit cards, but using 0% interest, if you have decent credit, like I had, I always managed my credit pretty well. Even when I didn't have a lot, it was really starting. I always had side hustles. I would deliver when I'd have jobs, or even when I would mow yards during the day, I would deliver pizzas at night for cash. And I'd put that cash into marketing. And at the time, that was door hangers. These days, that's more of your digital marketing efforts and tying your digital marketing efforts into grassroots, just talking through your networks and your networks can start with your friends and your family on social media, but also in person and giving them a call, but it can extend into the community as a whole, going to Chamber of Commerce meetings and such.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then as you continue to scale that lawn care business, then did you eventually move into the acquisition, or did you move into the pet waste business?
Eventually, no. The next thing I did was, 3, 4, 5 years goes by, and again, we didn't grow like a rocket ship. It's 2011, and I'm doing $300,000 in the same business. This is 2006, 2011. $400,000. So we got 2 or 3 trucks going. I'm making a pretty good living. I haven't quite made it to 6 figures, but I'm getting there. Buy my first house. I'm 24, 25 years old. And that's where pet waste removal comes in. And see, my dad's a fireman, and he had this good friend that was also a fireman. Firemen are also always doing side gigs. And he had this great friend when I'm in high school. This is back in 2002 years. I'm rewinding a little bit here. But he comes over and he's got this scoop soldier, like some kind of poop scooping service. And he's made shirts and he's going to go and do this. And this is where this idea is planted. This is, again, years before. Well, 10 years later, I buy my first house in McKinney, Texas, just north of us here in North Dallas. And there's a competing company that's storing their trucks in the retail center right next to my house. It's a national franchise back in this is 2010. And I couldn't stand to see those trucks. I knew there was so much potential in that business. And so I had the idea that we needed to start this separate business in 2010, or early 2011 is when we got our first 2 clients. And so we had this idea that we could get these clients off of our couple of hundred existing mowing clients, again, doing $400,000 a year in mowing. And that's when I partnered with my business partner. And he came up with the name, our company name for the pet waste business, Scoop Soldiers. It was prior to that, it was a different name, but since 2019, we've been Scoop Soldiers. He helped get us in and really led the way from 2011 all the way to 2019, got us franchised in 2019 at Scoop Soldiers. I was leading what is today Chorbie. He led the way on Scoop Soldiers and paved that way, got us our first 10 plus franchisees. And then earlier this year, I took over Scoop Soldiers in full, as well as Chorbie. And so Scoop Soldiers today has approximately 91 territories awarded and about 15 franchisees. Chorbie, on the other hand, has been focused more on growing as a home services business. We offer everything from plumbing to lawn mowing these days, but it's just also launched its first franchise this year. That's a key piece, a decade plus in the making. But it also, so we've got two brands, both franchised, and both actively growing.
Wow, that's incredible. And so I want to touch on I want to put a bookmark on the pet waste industry, because I think, that's interesting. A lot of people don't know about it, and we'll dive into that fully in a bit, but I still want to continue down kind of your journey with building this incredible business. And so where did Executive Lawn Care, where did that acquisition come into play?
Yeah, that's actually kind of a good next step. So 2011, I mentioned the launch of Scoop Soldiers. I bring in a business partner. A year later, he becomes my business partner. And again, what is today Chorbie, in the mowing business, basically at the time, mowing and fertilization weed control. And in 2014, a few years later, we passed $1 million by 2014 in our mowing business. Our pet waste business, again, little bitty at this point, very small, 1 truck, not even. But we had a good, close competitor that I had called and introduced myself to in 2012. Real friendly guy, and by 2014 we'd been stayed connected, and by 2014 we ended up buying his business, Executive Lawn Care. He had founded that business back in 2004 and had built it. And it was very similarly sized. When we acquired it, we grew by 80% at the date of acquisition, which was July 2014. So we grew in July 2014 from doing about $1.5 million a year to doing about $2.5 to $3 million a year. In July 2014, that was amazing. That was what I learned out of that was what's the term economies of scale. I'd never heard of that term at that time. But what I learned at that time was economies of scale. It worked out very well for us. It really grew us into just a better organization as a whole, cash flow, you name it, but because of economies of scale.
Yep. Can you share more about that for our audience of, how the concept of economies of scale,
Yeah, I'm going to probably butcher it. So I'll start by saying I would highly recommend that you Google and YouTube it and study it a little further. But my best attempt at an explanation is being able to take it maximizes your resources. When you think about economies of scale, if you can do XYZ with 1,000 clients in home services, for example, or $1 million in revenue, then do you need the exact same to do 2 million in revenue? Usually not. You don't normally need the same administrative staff to manage 2 million. So you get these economies of scale because you don't have to hire the equal amount of employees. Again, I'm probably not the best person to continue articulating that, but I would encourage you to Google it.
Yeah. Yeah. But essentially, I think you're right on there, right? Where it's like, okay, you have the same accounting staff that can, operate a 1 million and a $10 million business, et cetera, right? So you don't need 10x the amount of staff to do a $10 million businesses versus one. Or commonly in manufacturing or creating products, it's, the more you make, the cheaper it can get as well, right? So because maybe you paid for the mold the initial time, but then you can use that same mold to print out, 10,000 units of the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So once you merge those two businesses, talk to us about, like, for anyone thinking about starting or purchasing or acquiring a business, what was the thought process through that? How did you evaluate that? How did you integrate that with your existing business?
Yeah. One of the big things I looked at was, first off, the whole reason I had reached out to him back in 2012 was I thought he ran a very nice operation. He had good, clean trucks that all were the same. They were all these 2006 Toyota Tundras, and the mower setup was all the same. So I loved his system in terms of he clearly had systems and processes. And so that was a key piece. The other piece at buying it I looked at was the website. The website had been around longer than my website had been around. It was similarly placed when it comes to search engine optimization, which back in 2014 was a really big deal. That was something that we had capitalized on in prior years to help us grow. And so I looked at the value in his website. And then he also had a really solid team. And his systems and processes were very much so they fit into ours. And so that's something else. That's probably the most key thing to look at is when you're making an acquisition, especially if you're already a business owner, is to how do they merge together? Because they were merged together for about 2 years before we recognized we were losing the value in the website, and we had this brand. I also had some other, as an entrepreneur, you learn to not be so ashamed of changing your mind. And so as I learned more information, I changed my mind and some things. But it was born in Executive Lawn Care was reborn in 2016 after we acquired it and kind of rolled it up into the business at the time, which is today Chorbie. We rolled it up and then we kind of spun it back out 2 years later. That wasn't always necessarily that wasn't the master plan by any means.
Right. What was the reason for spinning it back out?
Again, that's a perfect example of how it never turned out the way it did. It's why I today have two competing companies. The company today, which is today Chorbie, that bought it, was mowing yards, doing lawn fertilization, weed control. We wanted to gain the clients. We wanted to do more mowing and so on and so forth. And so we bought it together. Well, then 2 years later, manpower is a huge challenge in mowing, especially in mowing, all business, honestly. But in mowing, it's huge, and it's hard to find people that want to mow yards. Let's just put it that way. Really hard to find people that want to mow yards.
So you mean there's a lot of turnover or?
Huge turnover. It's just big turnover, hard to train. You train them and then they're gone before you're even done training them. And so, we recognized that there was a lot better economics in fertilization weed control, a slightly higher skill set, right? A little more skilled trade. If you think about skilled trades and home services, we looked at fertilization weed control. It was more bang for your buck when it came to manpower versus profit versus net profit. I'll say it this way. It was a 60 to 70% gross profit versus a 40% gross profit, 60% gross profit, on mowing. And it had less headaches. And so we were really looking at, when we spun it off back in 2016, we were looking at that time separating our mowing from our fertilization and weed control, which was a little better. That never panned out. Separate from that, we had a third partner come along that said, look, I will pay you. I will buy equity in this new company if I can take the website of Executive Lawn Care, if I can take the success that you've got over here. I'll buy in and I'll build it. And so that was my first taste of being able to really partner with somebody who was going to really be the person who got the work done, rolled their sleeves up and built it. And so we had a third partner in that from 2016 took it from, about $200,000 in revenue that he was kind of given along with a website. He grew that to almost $4 million in the last 2 years, about what we've done in the last 2 years in revenues per year, about just under 4 million. And so he really operated that and grew that from day one.
I see. And so, EJ, can you touch on that about partnerships? Because people think about, hey, do I just start businesses myself? Do I, find a partner with complementary skill sets, et cetera? So across all your different businesses, is it the same partner across them, different partners? How was that all structured? And how do you think about, picking a partner?
Yeah. When you're picking a partner, choose wisely, kind of like picking a spouse. Yeah. Choose wisely. And how wisely you choose is really that absolutely is going to depend on your success, how wisely you choose. But choose wisely. Answer your question. I have a single business partner that's like a big brother to me. That yes, when we started the pet waste business, and we were equal partners and co-founded that back in 2011. He came to work at the mowing business, what is today Chorbie, and he helped me build and he helped me establish that fertilization weed control department. Prior to really building 2016 really building Scoop Soldiers. And so I have a business partner. We're partners in everything. There's nothing that I'm a part of that he's not a part of. And then I've got one other partner, and he's uniquely and specifically our partner at Executive Lawn Care that bought in and really built that business. And we're all friends. We've all known each other for years. And that's something else is, we knew each other and had a lot of camaraderie with each other prior. And so they're not family, but we're like family in a lot of ways. But I would say, partners are great. The skill set. I also very much so believe in giving people as much ownership as possible. I don't love the idea of being a sole proprietor, so to speak, and just have a whole bunch of, business is about people. And it's not just about increasing your net worth. You kind of want to work to increase the net worth of the people around you too, and the people that put work in every day and that you're closest with. And so I really believe honestly, and so that's why we've actually set up at Chorbie stock option plans recently, for example, to be able to get more people, more stakeholders into the business. I'm a big believer in that. It's also why I love franchising, because that's what that does.
Yeah. EJ, I'm curious. So when you started offering the stock options and starting to give, essentially employees opportunities to become owners, did you see a immediate change in output performance? Like what changed, pre and post that?
That's an awesome question, Michael. I would love to follow up with you. That is brand new. So we just in 2023, we established an Inc. from an LLC for Chorbie, and we just awarded, we established the stock option earlier this year, but we just did the awards literally in the last week. And so we set it up, to be continued, but I'm excited about it. I really think that I think we have a lot of buy-in already, honestly. So I don't know exactly. I'm not necessarily expecting it to do anything more, because I feel like the people that I've done this to, they're already bought in. Some of them have been with us for more than 5 years. That was one option, one way to get awards. But others, the time, the buy-in, what the time they put in, not just the time, but the enthusiasm and the passion that they put in, and they see the vision for Chorbie and Scoop Soldiers for that matter, because a lot of these people work at both. As far as our leadership team that's gotten these. And so I'm not sure I'll see a huge difference, because I think they're already pretty well bought in. But I also think there's something subconscious to it. I really do. And so that's the piece that is to be continued is there. I surmise that there's a subconscious factor here. And that's what I'm looking forward to see.
I see. And so was that more, it's interesting because, a lot of business owners, you have loyal team members, employees that have been with you, you want to reward them. But I'm curious, like, what was the thinking process? Even I'm sure when you're discussing with your partners of, should we do that versus there's other options to do that, such as bonus incentives, profit share, et cetera.
Right.
How did you guys think through that?
This is something that I've kind of been a student of the last couple of years and really led the way on wanting to do something like this. I want to learn the world of I personally wanted to learn the world of stocks and stock options. And I think I love LLCs and that corporate structure, and that's simpler and that's way better to start with for sure. And it makes a lot of sense. And you can easily look up and find out the negatives to establishing an Inc. But I also saw value in the establishment of an Inc. and having stocks and working in that world. I almost look at it all as it's almost like another currency, so to speak, beyond bonuses. We still do and want to do bonuses and pay for performance oriented initiatives. We still want to do that, but I also wanted to learn something new in the world of Inc. and Incs and stocks and stock options. And as you can tell just from my verbiage now, I really don't, I don't know it all that well. I'm learning it.
But you will soon. And yeah, I would
Yes.
say that it probably has a more long lasting effect, right? A bonus sometimes is maybe a shot in the arm, and maybe this is just more long term buy-in. Hey, I want to see this grow. So with that, let's transition over to poop. So tell us about the pet waste industry. What is it? Why does it exist? Who is it for? Tell us about that.
So it's for people that are taking part in the convenience economy, homeowners with pets, pet owners, and for that matter, there's a commercial aspect to it as well in municipalities and in multifamily. But it's pet owners and getting rid of the waste in their backyard. It's not something that can just be mulched up. It's not very convenient to be able to have your kids outside playing in the backyard. That's what the backyard's for, when it comes to families and why families love having a backyard in suburbs of major cities. And so it's for that. It's that same client that uses Uber Eats for the convenience, or the same client who just loves the convenience of 2023, right? There are some benefits to living in 2023, and convenience is one of them. And so it's a huge testament to the advancement of our economy and the American dream that poop scooping is a convenience you can pay for.
Yeah. So EJ, I just want to, for our audience, just make it dead simple what we're talking about here. The service really is somebody who, owns a pet or, a dog. Dog poops in the backyard. They don't want to pick it up. They don't want to clean it up. So, they hire service to come clean that up. Is that correct?
Yeah. For about $20 to $22 a week, for about $20 to $22 a week, we come out and scoop your dog's waste out of your backyard, and we can come as often as 3 times a week. We can come as infrequently as every 2 weeks. But that's exactly right. We come into your backyard, we take care of the waste for you.
I see. Yeah, that's so interesting because I grew up with 3 family dogs, right? And I remember, I'd be the one picking up the poop, right? And you just throw it in the trash can, and then trash day, they take it out. But I'm curious, like for people that want to use this, is it purely that the sanitation around it, or they just don't have time to do it? Like, who's the ideal customer type?
The ideal customer is the pet lover who doesn't care to do this, who believes in buying their time back through convenience, through paying for conveniences. That's the ideal customer. Now, there is absolutely a sanitation aspect to this. Absolutely. Dog waste has no value. A lot of people ask us in the pet business, well, what do you do with the poop? Do you recycle it for manure? And we don't, because there's no value to it. It's not like cow manure or something that can be reused as fertilizer. It's toxic. It's why when you pick up waste in green grass, the grass is yellow. Not to get too detailed in so there's a sanitation behind it, absolutely. And that we offer some additional services of very few, because we focus so much on picking up that waste in your backyard. But we offer sanitation services and deodorizer to get rid of the stink, but also to sanitize your backyard, your concrete, your patio areas. So there is a sanitation, but more than anything, it's to get rid of the waste, to keep your backyard clean, to keep your play area, whether it be the play area for the dogs, because it's their bathroom and their play area. And so that it's important to keep it clean for sanitation reasons. But obviously, convenience is what we focus on. Our mission statement is we take the stink out of pet ownership. It's about that convenience.
Nice. And so obviously that only works in markets where most of the homeowners have larger backyards, right? Like if people are in more of a metro area, that service doesn't necessarily work. So for example, I'm outside of Los Angeles when it's very dense or people don't have, not as many people have large backyards, then that's not really the use case. Is that correct?
I would actually say that no, there's absolutely a use case there. And in some cases, even more so. And the reason being is you have that smaller space. And so you might have a little dog, but you also have a little backyard. You might have a big dog in a little backyard, but that's all the more reason to need the service, because you can't get away with just letting the lawnmowers mow over it or whatever. You might not even have a yard to mow. It might be an atrium or it might be a courtyard of some sort. And so, we service Washington, D.C., a very urbanized area, and of course, major markets all over the country. Yes, it's less so.
Are there commercial use cases for this, like dog parks or,
Absolutely. In fact, that's an area that we're focused on as a business in 2024 and expansion. Is we're 98% of our business is residential. Yes, it's very much so suburban based as you're talking. Yes, yards that are a quarter acre is probably our average. Though we do multifamily, to answer your question, we do multifamily where, an apartment complex hires us to both install the pet waste stations. That's something else that we do, to install the pet waste stations, but also to maintain them. So there's multifamily, just to be clear on multifamily apartment complexes, of all shapes and sizes, suburban apartment complexes all the way to urban. So there's an element there. It's something that's a very small part of our business. It's a big part of some of our competitor businesses. And so it's an area that we're looking at expansion into. So there's a commercial play. Yes.
Got it. Due to like the sanitary aspects, is there like certain, permitting licenses, or could anybody start, a business like that purely just wants to put in the work and pursue the American dream?
Yeah, it's one of the easiest businesses you can get into from that standpoint. Now, that being said, you need to check with all your state and local governments. Every state and local government has different requirements for starting a business. So you want to definitely check with your state and local governments, but it is one of the easiest businesses you can get into. I always joke, it literally takes a truck, and there's argument to say that you don't even need a truck, because if you leave it in the homeowner dumpster, and some people do in the industry, it's not what we do. We haul it away. We consider that a part of the service. But some people don't even, they drive around in smart cars and they just scoop it and put it in and there's got to be a place to put it to the homeowner. But the point is you need a truck. You need about $30 worth of tools from Home Depot and trash bags. And so it's really easy. It's that, and you've got to have the work ethic. You also have to have the patience, because it's not a fast business. Your first 2 weeks, you're going to do tens of dollars in revenue in many cases. So it's not a really fast, but the beauty in it is once you build it, you have that recurring. You manage the clients, do a good job, you take care of them. Then your challenges change. Early on, your challenge is getting enough clients. Later on, your challenge becomes keeping people motivated to get the poop scooped as fast as possible and as efficient as possible, but with the highest quality.
Right. And so, EJ, something I've been thinking a lot about, and I'd love to hear your opinion, is, okay, you have all these traditional home service-based businesses. Where are the opportunities to implement technology, right? Because, for example, even the person that does landscaping for my personal home, he sends me, he mails me an invoice, and then he wants me to write him a check, and there's no technology involved, and he does houses all over in my neighborhood, right? So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of different, it gets me excited, because I'm like, there's a lot of inefficient operators. So I'm curious, from your perspective, how have you utilized technology in home care services?
The way you asked that question, and you teed it up perfectly, giving me the example of what you personally experience at your house, I could probably rant about this for the next hour in a number of different ways. The home services industry is ripe for disruption. Clearly, you just made the point. Like, you still get an invoice sent to you in the mail, or is it at least email?
No, in the mail. Paper.
In the mail.
Yeah.
Wow. You get an invoice sent to you in the mail. That is so 1992 or earlier.
And it's printed out, like you can tell they're printing it out from like Excel. Like they wrote it in cells in Excel in a grid, and then they print it out and mail it to me.
And so whether it's that, now don't get me wrong, there's an entire industry. There's 5 or 6 or 7, and they're adding to them daily. We're even thinking about doing the same thing. So I'm passionate about this product. This is, in other words, building technology. There's plenty of technology companies in home services that your landscaper could be using, that we've used, that we started with back in 2011. There's plenty of them. There's a dozen or more of them at all different price points. And then, of course, you can even get into the more enterprise level that are more multi-industry, like Salesforce and Service Titan. And you get into these bigger that a lot of us have heard of, or at least seen the signs on the buildings when it comes to Salesforce. But the industry is so dated. When you think about how our lives have changed in the last dozen years with Amazon Prime, or with other conveniences, DoorDash and Uber and Lyft, and technology, and the fact that, in 2006 when I started these businesses, the early stages of these businesses, a smartphone wasn't a thing. In fact, I was a late adopter to smartphones. 2012 is when you look at all that's changed with applications and technology. Home services is just way behind, and people know this. I say people, private equity. Big business knows this. That's why Amazon, I can sell my services on Amazon. They're testing it. It's not huge yet. I believe just in the same way that Uber Eats operates, Uber has plans and is making plans on entering home services and offering these services. I think you hear, I say regularly, I hear regularly because I'm paying attention to it. Money, whether it be engineers coming from the technology world, or whether it be big money, the big businesses, Google, trying to figure out, because home services is an untapped area. It's an untapped industry as a whole. It's not consolidated in any way. Private equity's working on it. They're working on consolidating this industry, but they're not innovating. They're not building the technology, to your point. They just look at them as cash cows, because they are cash cow businesses, as uncool as they might be. So again, I'm going to try to slow down, because you touched on but technology. This is something that Chorbie is working to innovate, and Scoop Soldiers is going to have a big part in it as well. But this is something Chorbie is looking to innovate. Imagine a world where you have an app, that you have a manager of all your home services, everything from your HVAC to your pools to your robotic lawnmower to your sprinkler system. You have one app and you have one direct source for all of the different pieces of your house. And then imagine a world even beyond that where it ties into your Google Home, and we can communicate with your apps of your pool and everything. I say we, Chorbie, can communicate with these things alongside you as kind of your home services manager, so to speak. And of course, we're delivering the service using franchisees that are plumbers and franchisees that are pest control technicians, all sharing one brand, Chorbie. And so really building that brand. That's a little of what we're doing. I don't know if that's where you were going or cared or not, but I'm very passionate about home services and technology.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see your perspective on how to integrate that technology in terms of that ecosystem. I'm thinking about, any listeners that maybe have a home service business right now that's not tech enabled. Are there like 2 or 3 different kind of dials you would recommend them turning? Like, okay, start taking electronic payments, start setting up an email list, or anything that, quick wins for them?
You definitely want to start requiring credit cards and billing automatically when the service is done. That's probably the first, and probably was one of my big game changers. Just recurring, and find a technology that you can click a few buttons and do it every day, and it takes you 5 minutes. Before the technology that I use and have used since 2011, I was a small independent operator using Excel, building this. We used one of the biggest game changers was the technology, because it went from taking me 12 hours to do invoicing manually, and I was emailing them at that time. I wasn't mailing.
You're ahead of the curve.
Except for to a few. But it took me, this is back in 2011, 2012, but it went from taking me 12 hours to do invoicing on a Sunday at the end of every month, to then doing it in literally 30 minutes on auto, clicking buttons, even if I was billing monthly. And then I quickly realized I don't need to just bill monthly. I need to be billing the day after every service. to manage that cash flow. That's a huge mistake that I think home service industries have, that are still billing monthly. They don't have the cash flow, man. It's way easier. It was game changing for us to bill the day after service for cash flow reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And EJ, what do you think, because you've been on both sides of that, right? Independent operator, small scale, and then now, multi 8-figure business. What do you think separates? Because I see so many of these businesses, whether they're contractors, lawn care, et cetera, where it's kind of like maybe it's a father-son duo, or it's just a small crew, but they can never quite expand to it being a multi-million-dollar business. How does somebody who's kind of in that early, they're the operator, owner, doing everything, how do they make that jump, or what's the main difference there? How does that gap get bridged?
You have to seek out and learn new things. You have to be seeking out and learn, what am I missing that this competitor down the road, even though you want to be careful not to compare, but what am I missing to not be growing? In these industries, your growth is completely contingent on you and how much resource allocation you can put towards marketing and your brand and your reputation. But it also has to do with how well do you follow through on providing your service. And so the simplest way, it's mindset. I used to hate it when people would say that when I was growing and such, but it's about your mindset. And I think a lot of companies don't look big enough. They don't think big enough. But a lot, and that goes back to that mindset. It dives into your leadership ability, because it's all going to be about the people that you're leading and teaching them how to do the work.
Yeah, I want to touch on leadership, because earlier we talked about, the industry itself, maybe home services in general. Labor can be tough, or finding quality team members, or turnovers an issue. So it's a more challenging leadership environment, which requires a unique set of skills. So I'm curious, to be successful in the home service industries, what are some of the key leadership skills?
Build goodwill with your people. For me, what worked for me, and again, this was something I learned. I'm not naturally charismatic. I'm not naturally people oriented. I can be very transactional. My wife reminds me of that from time to time. Luckily, she's very transactional too. So we're a very transactional household, which is great, but also we have to be mindful of that, because we are in people businesses. Taking good care of people and building that goodwill and being as upfront and honest. That's what's worked for me, is just laying it out for people. But then second to that, you also have to figure out how your vision as an entrepreneur fits into what their needs are and what their wants and desires are for the next 2 years, the next 5 years, whatever, and sell them. I say sell them on your vision and show them how they have a part in that. That's why we franchise. That's why I'm such a believer in getting as many stakeholders as possible. Because I want every team member, from the newest employee that we've got, to really think independently like an entrepreneur. That's what I think is necessary to compete in 2023, frankly.
Got it. And what have been some of the major challenges you've dealt with from being a leader of an organization like this?
Yeah, the people. As awesome as they are, the people are also the biggest challenge. But no, in all seriousness, building systems and processes, figuring out where you need to be black and white and be very stringent in a process, a procedure, how something's done, versus the gray, and working in the gray, and figuring and navigating that, making those decisions, and not being afraid to make the decisions, and then not being afraid to be wrong if you make the wrong decisions and correct it. But that's key.
Gotcha. And in the home care services industry, what's a high performing company culture? What does that look like in that industry?
I'm studying this still myself. I would interpret it as, in some ways we're really strong in these, in some ways we're not. So the one that I will really think we need to work on is sales. I believe that one of the things you got to do in the home services industry is be very focused on sales. We focus a lot on brand and taking care of the client, and that's one of the ways we've grown. But to really scale, what we've got to figure out how to ingrain into our culture is sales. I think sales is key, but it's also systems and processes. It's systems, processes, and accountability of your team, because it is all a team oriented. It's a team and people oriented business. It's very customer service heavy, but you've got to be able to handle customer service, but you've also be able to as a plumber, you've got to be able to know how to replace that hot water heater. But if you're a really, really good hot water heater replacer as a plumber, you've got to also have soft skills to be able to talk to and handle customer service. And so navigating that is important.
And so, EJ, why did you guys decide to branch into franchising? So you're operating this business, you're growing it, you're scaling it, and then you make the leap into franchising. What were some of the benefits, of going down that path?
Well, the reason we went down it, I always joke, is because my business partner read a book. And I joke because it was like, we read this book and it was like, all right, this makes perfect sense. We're franchising. The name of that book, by the way, was Franchise Your Business. It was a good book talking about franchising. But we realized in that book that we had expanded into like 12 markets by this time. This is 2017, 2018. We had expanded into like 12 markets with scoop soldiers because, again, very simple business. So it was easy to quickly duplicate into lots of markets, especially if you're willing to put a truck and hire an employee to scoop one house a week for a while. If you're willing to put those resources into it, that's how we expanded early on. But we realized we were missing out on lots of opportunity. And if we franchised, we could multiply and scale that growth that much more. And we realized that we were pretty good at systems and processes. We were pretty good at branding. And that's what's also needed to be a good franchisor. We were good at serving. We believed in ourselves and our ability to be able to serve franchisees, which pushes you into a whole new business model. When you're a franchisor, you're serving franchisees that have poop scooping businesses now. And that's a whole different business. But we saw that and knew that we'd be great at that, and maybe even better at that than we are at a poop scooping business.
I see. And what are the main responsibilities or differences in responsibilities of a franchisor versus a franchisee, specifically for scoop soldiers?
Yeah, specifically for scoop soldiers, our franchisees are scheduling the work every day. They own the trucks. They have the team members at their companies doing the actual work. The franchisor is handling the command center. They're handling the clients, the needs for the credit card, collecting credit cards, signing up new clients, is almost 99% of the time done by the franchisor. We bring in the clients. We manage the digital marketing for our franchisees. We handle a lot of the back office, not including your HR and some of those aspects of your back office. Right.
I see. So do you guys primarily drive the sales and marketing for them?
We drive the sales and marketing. Now, we're working on more initiatives to have more boots on the ground initiatives for our franchisees to really be able to tie into our digital marketing. And so historically, we've been very digitally marketing focused. We're working on branching out as we move into 2024. We believe we're going to need to hustle a little bit more in 2024 for our success. And so we're branching out and expanding both, as I mentioned, commercial sales, but also these other sort of initiatives, boots on the ground.
Well, EJ, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think what I find so interesting about your story is it doesn't have to be that complicated to have a business, being $25 million a year. Oftentimes we're overcomplicating, overthinking. We got to have this big new shiny idea, but oftentimes it can be a very needed service, having the work ethic, putting the right systems, teams, having it be tech enabled, et cetera. And there you go.
Constantly seek to grow and be ambitious and make decisions and think big.
Absolutely. I think that's a great spot to end it. Thank you so much for coming on, EJ.
Thank you, Michael. Very, very much so appreciate being on.